I didn't notice the betrayal all at once. It wasn't a slap across the face or a lipstick-stained collar. It was quieter than that. Softer, in a cruel kind of way. Like a draft through a window you forgot you left open, just cold enough to make you uncomfortable, but not enough to make you get up. Her name is Marla. My wife. We've been together 22 years. I used to think that kind of longevity meant something, like love became stronger the longer it was held. But time doesn't protect you from distance. Sometimes, time creates it. I first felt it last winter, though I think it started before that. We were sitting at the kitchen table. She was scrolling through her phone. I was telling her about a patient I had at the clinic, something small, nothing serious. And she didn't look up. Not once. Just nodded at the right moments, or maybe not even then. I stopped mid-sentence, waited to see if she noticed. She didn't. That was when I understood something had shifted. She used to laugh at everything I said, even the bad jokes. She used to press her cold feet against mine in bed just to hear me complain. Now, the space between us felt permanent. Like a hallway with no end. Like she had left, but left her body behind. And I stayed. I kept setting the table for two. I kept checking if she needed anything before I went to bed. I kept being the man who showed up, not because she asked me to, but because I didn't know how to stop loving her, even while she stopped loving me. Or maybe she never did. Maybe I just believed hard enough for both of us. There's a kind of erosion that happens in silence. Not the angry kind, not yelling, not slamming doors. Just the slow, everyday withering of being unseen. Being unchosen. Marla stopped touching me long before I realized touch was even missing. You don't notice the absence of a gesture, not right away. It disappears quietly. A kiss on the cheek becomes a nod. A hand on the back becomes air. One night you reach for her under the blanket and find nothing but cold sheet. And you lie there wondering if maybe you moved away first. I used to brush her hair out of her eyes when she read in bed. She'd lean into it like a cat. I tried that again a few months ago. She flinched, not dramatically, not rudely. Just enough to make sure I knew she didn't want it. Then she said, without even looking up from her tablet, "Don't. I'm not in the mood for that." That, like affection, had become some kind of demand. I didn't say anything. I never do. I don't know why. Maybe I was raised to believe that good men endure. That love means patience. That being ignored is better than being abandoned. And so I stayed. And I waited. For what, I couldn't tell you. For her to come back to me, I guess. For something to warm between us. But the warmth never came. Only more space. More polite indifference. And the worst part? She wasn't cruel. Not in any obvious way. She still asked if I wanted coffee. Still folded my socks. But there was no heart in it. No kindness, only habit. Like I was a piece of furniture she used to love, now too inconvenient to move, too familiar to throw away. I started saying, "I love you," more often, just to hear if she'd say it back. Sometimes she did. Most times she didn't. And when she did, it sounded like a receipt, proof of purchase, not passion. And every time I heard that flat, effortless, "Love you too," I felt smaller. Like I was apologizing for needing anything at all. There's something unbearable about looking into the eyes of the woman you love and realizing she's looking through you, not at you, but past you. Like you're no longer a person, just part of the wallpaper. Familiar. Unnoticed. Faded. I used to love her eyes. They were this strange shade, not quite hazel, not quite green, always shifting, like river water catching sunlight. I used to study them while she spoke. Now, I watch them only to see if there's anything left of her inside them. Spoiler, there's not. The worst moment, the one I replay at night when the house is too quiet, happened 2 months ago. I had come home early from work. Bought her favorite Thai food, even remembered the peanut sauce she always asked for extra. I thought maybe we could just sit and talk. Like we used to. She was on the couch. I smiled, held up the bag like some clumsy gesture of romance. And she looked at me, truly looked, for the first time in days. But there was no warmth. No recognition. Just irritation. She said, "Did you forget I had dinner plans?" And that was it. No thank you, no hug, no laugh. Just 10,000 needles in my chest, disguised as one casual sentence. I didn't ask who the plans were with. I couldn't. I already knew the answer, and I wasn't brave enough to hear it out loud. She left that night in a dress I hadn't seen before. Something tight, something meant to be noticed. She didn't ask if I'd be okay home alone. Didn't even look back. And I stood in the kitchen, holding 2 takeout boxes, listening to the sound of her heels fading down the front steps. I thought about texting her, "Drive safe," or "Have fun." Something husbandly. Something pathetic. Instead, I just sat down and ate both meals. Every bite tasted like rubber and regret. I've never felt so full and so empty at the same time. I don't think people talk enough about the cruelty of indifference. How sharp it can be. Colder than anger. Louder than screaming. At least rage still means you matter enough to be felt. But this silence between us, it was deafening. Marla used to hum while folding laundry. I know it sounds trivial, but I used to love that sound, her little off-key melodies floating through the house. It made our home feel lived in, warm. Lately, she folds everything in silence. Like she's angry at the fabric. At the very idea of softness. I tried helping once, thinking maybe the act of doing something together would pull us back to something real. I picked up a towel from the basket, smiled, said something dumb like, "Your folding's still better than mine." She looked up, and her eyes were blank, not angry, just flat. She took the towel from my hands, folded it herself, and said, "You always mess up the corners." That was it. That was all she said. Then she turned away. Do you know what it feels like to be gently erased? Not yelled at. Not hit. Not even insulted. Just corrected, dismissed, and forgotten, one towel at a time. I started thinking maybe I was the one going crazy. Maybe I was too sensitive. Too needy. Maybe I was asking too much by wanting her to look at me when she spoke. By wishing she'd still laugh at my dumb jokes. By missing her in a room she never truly left. But I'm not crazy. I'm just grieving someone who's still alive. Grieving a marriage that died so quietly, it forgot to tell us it was gone. Sometimes I sit in the car after work with the engine off, just listening to the ticking sound of the cooling metal. It's the only place where I don't have to pretend. Where I can breathe without watching my breath fog the glass of her disinterest. She still wears her ring. I check, even though I pretend not to care. But when I reach for her hand, it feels like I'm holding on to someone else's life, someone who used to be mine. I used to think that cheating was a sudden thing, a line crossed in one impulsive moment. But now I know better. It starts slowly. With a glance. A secret smile. A shift in attention that's so subtle, you almost miss it, until you're the only one left staring across a widening distance. Marla's phone became a fortress. Always in her hand, always tilted just slightly away. It would light up in the middle of dinner, and she'd glance at it with that faint, amused smirk, the kind she used to give me. I'd ask who it was. Not accusing, just curious. And she'd say, "No one." And that was the hardest part. Not that she lied. But that she didn't think I deserved the truth. One evening, we were sitting on the back porch, a place that once felt sacred to us. She was on her phone, thumb flicking across the screen like she was erasing time. I tried to start a conversation. Something simple. I asked her if she remembered the trip we took to Oregon, the time we got caught in the rain at Cannon Beach. She didn't even look up. Just said, "You always live in the past." I didn't answer. Not because I agreed, but because she was right, at least in that moment. The past was the only place she still loved me. I used to imagine it was harmless. Just texting. Just some coworker. But deep down I knew. I could feel it in the way she started dressing differently. The way she kept her laughter for someone else. The way she'd come home glowing, not the kind of glow you get from errands or traffic or a podcast. No, it was the kind of glow you only get when someone sees you the way you want to be seen. And it wasn't me doing the seeing anymore. She never confessed. I never asked. I don't think I could have survived hearing it confirmed. I didn't want a name. I didn't want details. I just wanted the lie to stay whole a little longer, because once it broke, I wasn't sure what would be left of me. So I just kept pretending. Nodding. Pouring her coffee. Wishing that whoever he was, he'd get bored, or move away, or vanish. But he didn't. And neither did she. She just stayed, physically, like a shadow pinned to the wrong body. And I stayed too. Like a fool who thinks that maybe, if he stands still long enough, love might remember where it left him. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary in every way. I remember because I had brought home bread, the kind she used to love, with cracked oats on top. I even stopped at the little deli she liked, the one way out of the way, because they made the egg salad just right. That's the kind of man I am, or at least, was. The man who remembered the small things, even when the big things were slipping away. She was supposed to be home by 7. At 8 I texted. Just a soft little, "Hey, everything all right?" She didn't reply. By 9, I stopped pacing the kitchen and just sat down in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. Didn't want to see the table set for two. The untouched sandwich. My own ridiculous hopes sitting beside me like a dog waiting for scraps. At 10 I knew. I didn't know where she was. I didn't know who she was with. But I knew she hadn't forgotten. She hadn't been in an accident. She just didn't want to come home. And I wish I could say I was angry. That I threw something. That I swore her name like a curse. But no, I just sat there. Numb. Quiet. Listening to the tick of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. Sounds that don't lie to you. Sounds that don't ask for less than you have. I thought about calling her. Not to yell. Just to hear her voice. Just to remind myself she was still mine, even if only technically. But I didn't. I didn't want to hear her lie with that empty softness in her voice, the one she saved for when she didn't care enough to argue. At 11:15, her car lights lit up the driveway. I didn't move. She came inside like she was returning from the grocery store. No apology, no explanation, just a tired sigh as she kicked off her heels. She looked at me on the couch. Our eyes met. I opened my mouth to say something, anything. She beat me to it. Don't start. I'm exhausted. Then she walked down the hall and closed the bedroom door. I sat there for a long time. Not crying. Not yelling. Just sitting. Like a man waiting for something that already passed. And in that moment I realized she hadn't betrayed me tonight. She'd done it 100 small times before. I was just finally ready to admit it. Sometimes, late at night, I talked to her, not the version that lives in this house, but the one I used to know. The one who danced barefoot in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. The one who pressed her forehead against mine in elevators, just because it made me smile. That version of her doesn't answer anymore, but I still speak. I tell her everything I never had the courage to say. Like how it felt, watching her drift away in plain sight. How every time she laughed at her phone, it chipped away at something inside me I didn't know could still hurt. How her silence made me question if I even existed beyond the chores I did, and the bills I paid. I want to ask her, no, beg her, why didn't you fight for me? Not even once. Not a word. Not a tear. Just withdrawal. Quiet, calculated distance. Like she was folding herself away piece by piece, and I was expected to understand that this was normal. That people grow apart. That marriages change. But love, real love, doesn't vanish like that. It doesn't just dissolve under the weight of routine. It might bruise. It might bend. But it doesn't abandon you without a final word. I wanted her to shout. To cry. To slam a door. Something. Anything that meant I still mattered enough to stir emotion. But instead I got apathy, that gray, unbearable middle ground between love and loathing. And I stayed. God help me, I stayed. Because I still remembered the version of her who used to breathe peace into my chaos. I kept thinking maybe she was still in there, just buried beneath exhaustion or grief or something I could help carry, if only she'd let me. But she didn't. She never reached for me. And I never asked her to. That's my greatest failure, I think, not that I lost her, but that I handed her the scissors. That I let her cut the thread between us while I stood there, holding the other end, whispering, "It's okay. I understand." I didn't understand. I still don't. People always ask when it ended. As if there's a date you can circle on a calendar. But endings are rarely loud. They don't always arrive with suitcases or final arguments. Sometimes the person you love just stops choosing you, quietly, efficiently, and continues living beside you like nothing ever changed. Marla still lives here. She still uses my coffee mug. Still leaves her shoes by the door. Still folds the laundry. But she left a long time ago. I think I kept pretending because I didn't know who I was without her. When you love someone for decades, they become a mirror. And when they stop reflecting love back at you, you start disappearing. You stop laughing. Stop initiating. Stop hoping. And you shrink. That's what I've become, smaller. Not just in the eyes of the woman who once said, "I do," but in my own. I no longer recognize the man in the mirror. He has my face, but not my light. He gets through the day. He smiles when spoken to. He makes lists and does the dishes and nods politely when friends ask how things are at home. Fine. That's what I always say. It's easier than the truth. Easier than admitting that the person I love most now makes me feel like a stranger in my own life. And still, I love her. Isn't that the cruelest part? Not that she stopped loving me, but that I didn't stop loving her. That after all the cold shoulders, all the silent dinners, all the nights I lay awake while she turned her back to me, I still reach for her in my sleep. I don't want revenge. I don't want her to suffer. I just want her to remember me. Not the man she left, the man who brought her flowers after dental surgeries, who held her when her father died, who sang to her softly when she couldn't sleep. I want to be remembered by the version of her who used to say, "No one makes me feel safer than you." But I know now that version of her is gone. And maybe the bravest thing I can do, the kindest thing, is to let go. To stop begging for crumbs when I once had the feast. One day I'll pack a bag. Nothing dramatic. No note. Just the quiet decision to stop standing at a closed door. Because the truth is, she didn't leave me tonight, or last week, or even when she met him. She left a long time ago. I'm just finally ready to walk away from the place she left me in. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help this video reach more viewers. See you in the next one.